us a little bit how on your farms you guys incorporate soil testing.
So we weren't real good at doing it for the majority of my formative years in agriculture. It's only been in the past few years that we've become really disciplined at it. And there was one big shift that we took. One is designating a person to do it. And I took on the ownership of walking and pulling those samples. The second shift was timing of the year. What we learned is if we had everything ready to go and following the combine through the fields, pull them as soon as you're done combining. And the reason for that is the year just continues to progress on, and then weather fights you. And who wants to go, if you've had your first October rain or November rain that's kind of cold and messy, who wants to go try to pull a soil sample in those conditions? So we found that the ownership of it, and then being able to just follow the combine around, there was a great deal of excitement about the yields that you get. And so you're ready to also get that next job done so you can plan for the new year.
Ben, you heard, and Rebecca's family on incorporating. So you take your approach as a soil scientist now on soil reports, and what are you looking for versus what most people think they're looking for?
Yeah, the status quo has always been PK and pH. So phosphorus, potassium, and pH being the primary three analytical points. And with that, most labs now incorporate base saturation numbers and stuff like that. But we still need to look at metals. We still need to look at micronutrients and that sulfur we were talking about. It wouldn't hurt also that quickly behind a harvest to look at soil nitrate levels. So when I need a test to give somebody a full recommendation, I'm looking for PK, pH, base saturation numbers, and micronutrients along with sulfur, and making sure that we have all of that data to be able to make the right recommendations going forward, because the dynamics of what we know about how everything interacts, it's important to get as many of those relationships figured out as possible that are necessary to moving forward. The other thing is that I definitely want to see more and more soil biology testing done as we learn more about that and as we develop systems that actually analyze that properly.
I think that in the industry, I think that's where we're headed. I think you see companies now that are starting to form that are taking a look at the microbial side of everything that's going on in the soil. But would you? So Rebecca, you walk through some issues on the farm. How would you say our approach when you think about how you've taken a lot of tests? Has it benefited you by doing that?
Without a doubt. First of all, what Ben teaches in concept does get very tactical, practical at the point of recommendation. And there's a set of calculations that we should all be using, because you are trying to achieve balance. And I think the example of that is the nitrogen guys have done a great job in selling for the last 50 years to where we're all very, very fixated on how do we get enough nitrogen on the field for the next crop. But we often forget about the balance of PK and all the microbes, and all of those have estimation calculations that should be factored into your total fertility plan. So for us, relearning the balance of what the plant needs in order to perform at its most healthy ability was an incredible learning around our breakfast table. Then Energy Curve providing us a tool, both Ben's knowledge and insight along with the calculator helped us put those numbers into an actionable plan. And the bottom line is, Todd, it has saved us money.
So Ben, let me ask you, when you think about the soil testing, what's the most important? I mean, so when you think about a hay guy, where Joel is selling into hay industry, is calcium seems to be the number one. I got to spread lime every year. So talk just a little bit of how that is a positive, but yet it can also be a negative if they're not taking a sample to know exactly what's happening in their fields.
Yeah, I think that speaks directly to frequency on soil testing, which is, again, one of the biggest misnomers in the industry, is that I take a test and I wait 3 years to do it again. Everything shifts. In some cases, some nutrient loads and biological activities shift in a matter of days. And so we need a continual picture of what's going on out there. So even in what people consider a very basic crop that doesn't seem to need a lot of attention, in fact, are losing because they're not seeing what's going on there. In most cases where we go on to a hay operation where they have not had a regular testing protocol, even an every 3-year testing protocol, we find that they've done things like arbitrarily applied lime every year. And you get excesses of calcium built up in that ground. And as we know by chemistry, when you have excess calcium, anything else that you put out there gets really attached to it, and it doesn't let go very easily. But then you run into the opposite of that, where, people just do nothing and have this expectation based on rain alone. And water is a very important part of the equation, but it's not really the biggest part of the equation that we once thought it was. And so the testing frequency is very necessary, to be testing more often and regularly to get a bigger picture of what you can do. And that's where I start seeing the most successful growers test annually and sometimes twice a year. It depends on the farm itself. And when you look, and Rebecca's done a great job analyzing this, when you look at the value proposition that comes from that, it's almost always a positive. But again, if we go back to the status quo of tri-state recommendations and stuff like that, we can test every year, but they're not going to recommend anything any different. They're going to say you want 200 bushels of corn, then put 220 units of nitrogen out. Right. So that's the other part. The industry is playing catch up in a big way on how the analytics play going forward. And there's some private companies, some labs out there that are doing a wonderful job at doing that sort of